You're crossing rolling grasslands when the earth trembles beneath your boots, not distant thunder or approaching cavalry. This vibration comes from directly below. The ground buckles and splits, erupting upward in an explosion of soil and stone. Something massive launches into the air with the grace of a breaching whale and the intent of a missile. A walking tank with a shark's fin and a mouth that could swallow a halfling whole. Its jaws snap shut on empty air as it arcs overhead, casting a shadow that blocks out the sun. Then it crashes down, already turning towards its next victim. Welcome to the Bulette, the Landshark. Since the earliest days of Dungeons & Dragons, this creature has terrorized adventurers who thought solid ground meant safety. The Bulette represents predation in its purest form. No magic, no breath weapons, no supernatural powers, just armor thick enough to turn aside most blades, tremor sense that detects footsteps from 100 feet away, and jaws powerful enough to bite through plate mail. It burrows, hunts, kills, repeats. Understanding the Bulette requires looking beyond the stat block. Its origin ties directly to the birth of tabletop gaming. Its ecology raises questions about how subterranean food chains actually function. Its evolution through 5 editions tells us something about how D&D itself has changed. The Bulette started as a plastic toy dinosaur and became one of gaming's most recognizable monsters. The Bulette's creation story reveals how early D&D built its bestiary. In the early 1970s, Gary Gygax needed monsters for his Greyhawk campaign. Mythology provided dragons and demons, fantasy literature gave him beholders and mind flayers, but Gygax wanted more variety, and he found it in the toy aisle of a dime store. A bag of plastic creatures from Hong Kong, probably kaiju knockoffs, sold for less than $1. These weren't accurate dinosaurs. The manufacturers had taken liberties with anatomy, creating hybrids that didn't match any real prehistoric creature. One particular figure caught Gygax's attention. Bulky, armored with prominent dorsal fin ridge, and a mouth built for destruction. The toy was likely based on Ghohlbrorn, a uranium-eating monster from Episode 9 of Ultraman. Gygax brought the toys home and used them as miniatures in his games. He called the armored creature a Bulette because of its shape, but Gary Gygax didn't write up the creature's official statistics. That honor belonged to Tim Kask, an early TSR employee and the first editor of Dragon magazine. Kask tells the story. I had an empty page in that issue of the Dragon because a full-page ad either canceled or was late, and I had to go to press. Gary and I had several talks about creating monsters, and he had frequently encouraged me to let my imagination run wild. The Umber Hulk and the Rust Monster were fabrications to explain 2 plastic monsters from the bag of weird critters. There was still one that had not been taxonomically identified yet that intrigued me. They called it the Bulette. I frogged that name up a bit. Kask gave the creature a French pronunciation, Bulette, playing off the heraldic term bullet, for a cannonball depicted on a coat of arms. He later joked the pronunciation came from Mandarin, the language of his homebrew campaign setting. The debate over pronunciation continues decades later, though most players just call it a Landshark and avoid the issue. That nickname has its own origin story. In 1975, Saturday Night Live was hitting its stride with sketches parodying Jaws. The Landshark sketch featured a predator that knocked on apartment doors pretending to be a candygram. When Kask imagined what a real Landshark might be in D&D terms, he pictured something that moved through the earth the way sharks move through water, with a dorsal fin breaking the surface as it's hunted. The Bulette debuted in Dragon magazine #1 in June 1976, and that image of the fin cutting through soil became iconic. The origin from toys and sketch comedy explains something crucial about the Bulette's design. It wasn't engineered to fit a specific ecological role or represent a particular challenge type. Someone looked at a cheap plastic toy, watched Saturday Night Live, and thought, what if that thing could swim through rock and eat adventurers? That creative freedom shows in every aspect of the creature's description. Physical form. A mature Bulette stands 9 feet tall and measures 12 feet from snout to tail. Weight varies wildly by edition and source, anywhere from 1 to 4 tons depending on how recently it's fed and which manual you're consulting. The largest specimens approach the upper end of that range. Every aspect of its anatomy serves the same purpose, moving through solid earth and killing whatever gets in the way. The dorsal fin dominates its profile, a tall ridge of thick plating running from just behind the head to the tail base. When a Bulette burrows, this fin acts as a blade, splitting earth and soft stone ahead of the creature's bulk. The fin also functions as a sensory organ, detecting vibrations transmitted through solid material. A Bulette can sense human footsteps from over 100 feet away through packed earth, much further in stone or other materials that conduct vibrations well. Overlapping plates cover the creature's body like medieval armor, thicker and harder than an armadillo's shell. The plates consist of a substance that's part keratin, part mineral deposit, stone hard but flexible enough to allow movement. These plates protect everything except the belly, the creature's one true weak point. The coloration is distinctive, blue-brown around the head and rear portions, shifting to gray-blue or blue-green across the midsection. The armor isn't just thick, its slight porosity allows the Bulette to sense minute changes in air pressure and temperature, providing another detection method even when dozens of feet underground. Short, massively muscled legs provide the explosive power needed for the Bulette's signature attack. Each foot ends in curved claws designed primarily for excavation, though they work fine for combat when needed. The claws grow constantly, worn down by the act of burrowing, maintaining razor edges without deliberate sharpening. The jaws open wide enough to engulf a human torso. Triangular serrated teeth grip and tear, regrowing through the Bulette's life like a shark's. The teeth and claws are dull ivory in color. The comparison to sharks extends beyond dentition. Bulettes are in constant motion when hunting, never stopping, always searching for the next meal. The eyes are small, set far back on the skull, protected by bony ridges. They're yellow with blue-green pupils, surrounded by brown-black skin. Vision plays a minor role in hunting despite the fact that Bulettes can see in perfect darkness. The creature relies instead on tremor sense, an ability to detect and interpret vibrations so acute that a Bulette can distinguish between species by their footfalls alone. The hunt. Watching a Bulette hunt requires rethinking everything about predator behavior. No stalking through underbrush, no ambush positions behind cover. The Bulette's hunting ground lies beneath your feet, and its attack comes from a direction most creatures never defend. A hunting Bulette cruises at 30 to 40 feet below the surface, deep enough to move through most soil and soft stone without creating obvious disturbances. It maintains a steady pace, tremor sense mapping everything above it in 3 dimensions. When prey registers on that sensory map, the Bulette adjusts course to intercept. The attack unfolds in stages. First, positioning. The Bulette moves directly beneath its target, rising to within 10 feet of the surface. It can hold that depth while matching the horizontal movement of prey above. A wolf shadowing deer through the forest, except the wolf is underground and the deer has no idea it's being tracked. The trembling starts here, the first warnings most victims receive. Then comes the land breach. The Bulette angles upward and accelerates. Powerful legs driving it through intervening earth at speeds exceeding 30 miles per hour. The dorsal fin splits the ground ahead. The creature erupts in an explosion of dirt and stone, traveling 15 to 20 feet into the air. Its mouth is open, its trajectory is calculated. By the time you see it, dodging is no longer an option. The solid bite means the Bulette doesn't let go. It crashes back down to earth while shaking its head violently, the same death roll crocodiles employ. They don't do this just to cause damage. The shaking disorients prey, prevents escape, begins breaking down the meal into manageable pieces. Even if the initial bite doesn't kill, the impact and thrashing often does. The hunting method's effectiveness comes from how little counterplay exists. You can't track a burrowing Bulette. You can't lay traps it will trigger. You can't establish a defensive position when the ground itself is the attack vector. Traditional adventuring strategies mean nothing. Keep your back to the wall offers no protection when the enemy approaches from below. Experienced travelers learn to read warning signs. That trembling ground isn't always a Bulette, but investigating makes sense. Some rangers claim they can identify a Bulette's approach by vibration patterns, though this seems more like wishful thinking than reliable detection. The best defense is continuous movement, varied speed and direction, hoping the Bulette decides you're too much trouble and moves on to easier prey. Diet. Bulettes are obligate carnivores with appetites that would bankrupt attempts at captive feeding. An adult needs roughly its own body weight in meat every 2 weeks. When that creature weighs 1 to 4 tons depending on source, the math becomes staggering. The creature shows distinct, almost obsessive preferences. They strongly favor fresh meat over carrion and warm-blooded prey over cold-blooded. Among available targets, they particularly love horses. A single horse sustains a Bulette for 3 to 4 days, making livestock frequent victims in regions where Bulettes approach civilization. The preference for equines is so pronounced that Bulettes will choose a horse over nearly any other prey. Then there are halflings. Bulettes crave halfling flesh with an intensity that has spawned numerous theories. Some scholars suggest the taste itself attracts them. Others propose the halfling size makes them ideal prey, large enough to be worth the effort, small enough to swallow easily. Whatever the reason, Bulettes will pursue halflings with single-minded determination, even digging into their burrows. Halflings in Bulette territory develop hypervigilance that borders on paranoia, and with good reason. Elves present a curious case. Bulettes will not eat elf flesh, dead or alive. They'll kill elves on sight without hesitation, but they won't consume the bodies. This peculiarity has led to speculation that elven magic was involved in the Bulette's creation, perhaps as a magical creature that gained the ability to reproduce naturally. The theory remains unproven, but the behavior is consistent across all observed specimens. Dwarves fare slightly better. Bulettes dislike dwarf flesh and avoid eating it when possible, though they will if sufficiently hungry or if nothing else is available. This means dwarves still get attacked and killed, just not eaten afterwards. Small comfort when you're being torn apart by a landshark. The creature's approach to armor and equipment is brutally pragmatic. It doesn't strip gear before eating, it swallows everything. A Bulette can digest metal, weapons, even magical items through powerful stomach acid. What it can't digest, it regurgitates later in pellets similar to owl pellets but vastly larger. These Bulette pellets found near their lairs often contain bent weapons, shattered armor, and sometimes magic items that survive both attack and digestion. Treasure hunters specifically seek Bulette lairs because of these pellets. The accumulated gear of dozens of victims over years makes for substantial potential loot. Approaching a Bulette's lair to search for treasure is exactly as dangerous as it sounds. The creature doesn't venture far during the day, and disturbing its rest guarantees violent response. Bulettes don't feed daily. After a large meal, they enter reduced activity, burrowing to a safe depth and remaining mostly stationary while digesting. This period lasts 2 days to a week depending on meal size and ambient temperature. Cold weather slows metabolism, extending time between hunts. Warm weather accelerates everything. During dormant periods, Bulettes are less dangerous. They don't respond to surface vibrations unless something lands directly overhead. Knowing whether a Bulette is dormant or actively hunting requires getting close enough to check, which defeats the purpose. Reproduction. Bulette reproduction is poorly documented, mainly because observing mating requires being near 2 extremely aggressive predators simultaneously. Available information comes from dissecting dead specimens, finding eggs, and occasional scrying magic used by mages valuing self-preservation. Bulettes reach sexual maturity around 5 years old. Mating occurs every 2 to 3 years, typically in early spring when prey animals are abundant. Males locate females by detecting pheromones released into surrounding soil. These pheromones can travel through earth for miles, creating scent trails that males follow to their source. According to sources from the Forgotten Realms particularly, this mating ritual is elaborate. Males engage in complex behavior, killing deer and boars, arranging them in a circle, digging a shallow pit in the center, lining it with bones, then spending about a week grinding those bones into fine powder. The male then digs beneath the pit and waits. Females are attracted by the odor and arrive within a month. Mating itself is brief. Immediately afterward, the male leaves. Boulets show no pair bonding or cooperative behavior. Gestation lasts approximately 4 months. The female then lays eggs, sources vary wildly, mentioning anywhere from 2 to 4 eggs in some accounts, up to a dozen in others. These eggs are enormous, roughly watermelon-sized, with thick, leathery shells. Some accounts describe them as covered in spines. Females lay eggs deep underground, sometimes more than 100 feet down, in specially excavated chambers. Females guard eggs aggressively during 4-month incubation. They rarely venture far from the nest, feeding only when necessary. Pregnant and egg-guarding females are among the most dangerous boulets. Their already aggressive temperament intensifies, and they attack anything entering their territory regardless of threat level. When young boulets hatch, they're already formidable. Newborns are roughly large dog-sized, weighing around 50 pounds, and can burrow through soft earth immediately. The dorsal fin exists but isn't fully hardened, and armor plates are softer and more flexible than adult armor. Despite relatively soft protection, juvenile boulets are still dangerous to anything smaller than themselves. According to some Forgotten Realms sources, once hatched, newborn boulets immediately attack their mother, attempting to kill her. She fights back, usually killing most of the young, but succumbs to their attacks more often than not. During hatching, females reportedly make a noise like an elephant. Other sources simply state that young boulets disperse immediately after hatching, each burrowing in a different direction. The truth likely varies by region and subspecies. This instinctive dispersal prevents sibling competition for prey and increases chances that some survive to adulthood. Juvenile boulets hunt smaller prey than adults. They target rabbits, foxes, and similar animals during their first year. As they grow, prey size increases accordingly. Mortality rate for juveniles is high. Many are killed by larger predators, including adult boulets, who don't distinguish their own offspring from any other potential meal. Others starve when unable to find adequate prey. Scholars estimate only 1 in 5 boulets survive to maturity. Survivors grow quickly. A boulet reaches half adult size by the end of its first year and full size by age 3. Growth slows considerably after that, though boulets continue growing slowly throughout their lives. The largest boulets on record are estimated to be several decades old, having survived far longer than the typical 15 to 20 year lifespan. Territory. Boulets maintain enormous territories, often covering 20 to 30 square miles. These territories overlap with those of other predators without conflict because boulets and surface hunters rarely compete for the same prey at the same time. What a boulet won't tolerate is another boulet in its territory. Territory marking happens underground. A boulet creates a network of tunnels through its range, not as permanent burrows but as boundary markers and travel routes. These tunnels are filled with scent markers, shed armor plates, waste, specialized secretions that communicate information to other boulets. The message is simple: this area is occupied, stay away. When two boulets encounter each other, violence is almost inevitable. They fight underground in battles that create tremors detectable on the surface. Witnesses describe these conflicts sounding like distant thunder mixed with grinding stone. The fights are savage and usually end only when one boulet is dead or has fled. Given their armor and strength, these battles can last hours. Losers of territorial disputes, if they survive, must relocate to unclaimed territory. This can drive boulets into areas that they wouldn't normally inhabit, including regions close to civilization. Many boulet attacks on settlements occur not because the creature is drawn to humanoids, but because it was forced into marginal territory by a larger, more dominant boulet. Inside its territory, a boulet maintains several important locations. The primary lair, usually in a region with good stone access and minimal surface disturbance. Secondary resting spots scattered throughout the range. Places where the boulet can digest in relative safety. Preferred hunting grounds, areas where prey density is highest and soil composition makes burrowing easiest. The lair itself is distinctive. Excavated deep underground, far below normal hunting depth, the chamber is large enough for the creature to move comfortably, roughly 20 feet in diameter for adults. The floor is littered with regurgitated pellets, a macabre museum of hunting success. Walls show scratch marks from the creature's claws. The ceiling is usually reinforced with saliva that hardens into cement-like substance, preventing cave-ins. Access comes through multiple tunnel entrances, each descending at steep angles. These entrances are rarely used. The Bulette typically burrows directly to and from its lair rather than following the same path repeatedly. The tunnels exist primarily as emergency exits if the lair is compromised. Combat. Fighting a Bulette requires abandoning most adventuring tactics. Formation, positioning, range, these concepts mean nothing when your enemy ignores terrain and attacks from any direction. Veterans who survive Bulette encounters share hard-won lessons. First, you can't outrun it. The Bulette's burrow speed matches or exceeds a human's sprint on flat ground, and the creature maintains that pace far longer. Running just turns you into easier prey. Standing and fighting gives better odds, though those odds aren't great. Standard weapons have limited effectiveness. Armor plates deflect most slashing attacks outright. Piercing weapons can sometimes find gaps between plates, but hitting those gaps requires precision difficult to achieve against a moving target while dodging its attacks. Bludgeoning weapons work better. A solid hit from a warhammer or mace can crack armor plates or at least stun the creature temporarily. Magic offers more options, but Bulettes resist many types of spells naturally. Their armor possesses some inherent protection against magical energy. Spells relying on elemental damage, fire, cold, lightning, acid, often have reduced effectiveness. What works better are spells that bypass armor entirely. Force-based magic, spells attacking the mind, or effects that alter the ground itself. The creature's reliable weakness is his belly. The underside has much lighter armor, thin enough that a well-placed sword thrust can penetrate. The problem is getting underneath a Bulette to strike this weak point. The creature instinctively protects its belly, keeping it against the ground whenever possible. Some successful strategies involve creating pits or trenches, forcing the Bulette to expose its underside when moving over or through these obstacles. Another approach is attacking while the Bulette breaches. During that moment when it launches from the ground, the belly's exposed as it arcs through the air. This requires split-second timing and courage because you're deliberately positioning yourself in the creature's flight path. Miss your strike or fail to inflict serious damage and you're directly in position to be grabbed when the Bulette comes down. Environmental factors matter more in Bulette fights than most encounters. Reaching solid stone, the kind too hard for a Bulette to burrow through, provides massive advantage. The creature loses its ability to retreat and maneuver underground. It becomes just another large armored predator, dangerous but manageable. Unfortunately, this terrain isn't always available. Bulettes specifically avoid areas with too much solid stone because it limits hunting effectiveness. One tactic that sometimes works, creating loud continuous noise. Heavy drums, thunder spells, or just everyone stomping and yelling at once can overwhelm the Bulette's tremor sense. The creature relies on that sense to hunt, and disrupting it disorients and confuses the predator. This doesn't drive off the Bulette, but it can force it to surface where you can see it coming instead of attacking from underground. Groups with earth-moving magic have the best options. Spells manipulating stone and soil allow detecting the Bulette's position while underground, tracking its movements, potentially trapping it. An earthen prison won't hold a Bulette long, but you don't need long, you just need enough time to either escape or finish the fight on your terms. Variants. While the standard Bulette is dangerous enough, several official variants exist throughout D&D's history. These showcase how the basic design adapts to different environments and circumstances. The Ghohlbrorn, also the dwarven name for standard Bulettes, appeared in Dragon Annual 1 in 1996 and Monstrous Compendium Annual Volume 4 in 1998 as an intelligent Underdark variant. These creatures are smaller than surface Bulettes but with much higher intelligence. They travel and hunt in packs, communicating in their own guttural language. They're tactical, discerning about targets, and work together in small tribes to ambush creatures in the Underdark. Unlike their surface cousins, Ghohlbrorn find drow delicious and actively seek them out. They can also spit rocks stored in their gullets, giving them a ranged attack their surface relatives lack. The Magma Bulette or Magma Landshark exists in volcanic regions and has appeared in multiple sources, most notably in Critical Role's Territorial campaign setting. These creatures are elementally infused with fire, with body temperatures ranging from 500 to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. They can swim through bedrock and magma at full speed. Their bite deals fire damage, they radiate heat that damages nearby creatures, and they can swallow prey whole, subjecting them to intense internal heat. When killed, their bodies cool into basalt-like stone, with their digestive tracts solidifying into metal-rich ore worth smelting. Dire boulets are mentioned in various sources as simply very old, very large specimens. These creatures can reach 20 feet in length and weigh over 3 tons. They're strong enough to burrow through solid granite and can breach high enough to hit creatures on second-story balconies. Fortunately, dire boulets are rare. Most boulets don't survive long enough to reach this size, and those that do often become so large they can't find adequate prey, eventually starving despite their hunting prowess. Various homebrew and unofficial sources describe Arctic, desert, and other environmental variants, but these lack the canonical status of the Ghohlbrorn and Magma Bulette. The concept makes logical sense. A creature that can burrow through earth could theoretically adapt to frozen ground or sand, but official D&D sources haven't extensively detailed these variants. Attempts to domesticate or tame boulets have been made throughout history, with predictably disastrous results. Boulets seem to lack capacity for loyalty or even basic conditioning. They attack handlers, break free from restraints, and generally cause mayhem before being killed. A few mages claim to have successfully commanded boulets through magical compulsion, but even then the creatures remain dangerous and unpredictable. The exception appears to be the magma boulets, used as mounts by earth cultists in some campaign settings, though this relies on continuous magical control rather than actual domestication. Ecology. Despite their danger, boulets serve important roles in ecosystems they inhabit. Like any apex predator, they help maintain balance among prey populations and influence behavior of other species in their territory. Prey animals in boulette territories develop distinctive behavioral patterns. Herds become more mobile, never staying in one location long enough for a boulette to properly target them. Individual animals develop hyper-awareness of ground vibrations. Deer, elk, and similar creatures in boulette ranges will bolt at tremors that might be ignored in safer regions. This constant vigilance comes with costs, reduced feeding time, higher stress levels, but it's necessary for survival. The tunnels boulets create also impact the underground environment. These passages provide routes for water to flow through soil that might otherwise be impermeable, improving drainage in some areas while causing sinkholes in others. Other burrowing creatures use abandoned boulette tunnels as shelter, creating entire ecosystems within the earth that depends on the boulet's excavation activities. Some claims suggest that soil through which a boulette is passed becomes imbued with magical rock-dissolving properties, though this remains difficult to verify. Carrion feeders benefit from boulette kills. The creatures rarely consume entire prey, especially when dealing with large animals. What remains attracts scavengers, from dire rats to large predators. In some regions, certain scavenger species have learned to follow vibrations of boulette hunts, arriving quickly to claim whatever the boulette leaves behind. The presence of a boulette affects whether other predators can successfully hunt. Surface predators avoid areas where boulets are active, not because the boulette poses direct threat, but because prey animals in those regions are too alert and difficult to approach. This creates complex dynamics where territories of different predators shift in response to each other's locations. Cultural significance. In regions where boulets are common enough to be regular threats, these creatures feature prominently in local folklore and cultural practices. Different societies have developed their own traditions and beliefs around these underground predators. Many agricultural communities perform rituals meant to ward off boulets or redirect them towards less valuable hunting grounds. These rituals vary widely but often involve making loud noises at regular intervals, driving metal stakes deep into the earth around fields, or spreading substances supposedly repelling boulets through their scent. The effectiveness of these practices is questionable at best, but they provide communities with a sense of agency against a threat they can't otherwise control. Warriors in boulette territory sometimes wear trophies made from boulette armor plates. These plates are extremely difficult to remove from dead boulets, requiring both strength and specialized tools, which makes them valuable symbols of prowess. Dwarven smiths in particular prize the large plates from behind the boulet's head, which can be fashioned into exceptional shields, +1 to +3 enchantment value in earlier editions. A warrior wearing a Bulette plate armor is immediately recognized as someone who has faced one of nature's perfect predators and survived. Some cultures have elaborate ceremonies around crafting and presenting such armor. Children in these regions grow up with Bulette-related cautionary tales. Don't dance in fields, don't stomp when walking through grasslands, never lie down on bare earth for a nap. These warnings become ingrained behaviors, part of unconscious knowledge that keeps people alive in dangerous territory. Some druidic circles view Bulettes with mixed respect and wariness. They recognize the creature's role in maintaining ecosystem balance but also acknowledge its danger. Druids rarely attempt to communicate with Bulettes. The creatures seem to lack intelligence for such interaction. Instead, druids focus on understanding Bulette movement patterns and helping communities live alongside these predators without provoking attacks. Evolution through the editions. The Bulette's mechanical implementation has changed significantly across D&D's various editions, though its core concept has remained consistent. These changes reflect evolving game design and shifting philosophies about what monsters should represent. In Dragon Magazine No. 1 in June 1976, the Bulette made its debut with a fascinating quirk. It didn't burrow. The original Bulette was a surface creature, described as standing 9.5 feet tall and over 12 feet long. It could jump 8 feet with blinding speed and moved across land faster than most horses. The creature was very stupid with animal intelligence, loved horseflesh and halflings, and wouldn't eat elves dead or alive. It dislikes dwarves. The Landshark nickname comes from its dorsal crest in the SNL sketches, but the original creature hunted on the surface. Tim Kask's description emphasized its ability to move silently despite its size and attack with surprising speed. When the monster manual appeared in 1977, the Bulette gained its burrowing ability. Now the dorsal crest breaking the surface like a shark fin made literal sense. The creature actually moved through earth like a shark through water. This version cemented the Bulette's origin story as the wizard's creation, a magical hybrid of armadillo and snapping turtle with some demon ichor thrown in. The creature became a true underground predator, though it retained the dietary preferences and very stupid intelligence from the Dragon article. Second edition kept most of the first edition's implementation but added more detail about ecology and behavior. The descriptions became richer with more information about how Bulettes hunt, breed, and interact with their environment. This edition also introduced the concept of Bulette lairs as potential adventure locations, places where brave or foolish adventurers might seek accumulated treasure from previous victims. Third edition and 3.5 codified many aspects of Bulette behavior through the game's mechanical framework. The creature gained Earth Glide as a defined ability, making burrowing more efficient. Tremor Sense became a specific ability with clear ranges and limitations. The jump attack was formalized as a special ability with explicit mechanics. This version of the Bulette was slightly less dangerous than earlier editions due to changes in how armor class and attack bonuses worked, but it remained a significant threat. The size was listed as huge in 3E. 4th edition reimagined the Bulette as more of a train control threat. It gained abilities that affected the battlefield itself, creating difficult terrain and knocking prone anyone in its landing zone. The creature became as much about disrupting party tactics as about raw damage output. Some players felt this version lost some of the original simple, primal menace, while others appreciated the added tactical complexity. 5th edition returned to a stripped-down implementation while keeping the most successful additions from the previous editions. The current Bulette has a straightforward stat block, high challenge rating for its level, CR5, and clear abilities that capture the creature's nature without overwhelming complexity. It's classified as large rather than huge, standing 9 feet tall and 12 feet long. Its Deadly Leap ability combines the land breach with follow-up attacks, creating a single turn that can seriously threaten even prepared parties. The 5e Bulette maintains Intelligence 2, very stupid, and can make a standing leap of 30 feet with a high jump of 15 feet. Its armor class dropped from earlier editions, 22 to 17, but bounded accuracy means it is still formidable protection. Throughout all these changes, the Bulette has maintained its position as one of D&D's iconic monsters. It appears in virtually every monster manual and setting guide. New players quickly learn to fear the Landshark, just as players have for 5 decades. The creature has transcended its origin as a weird plastic toy to become a fundamental part of the D&D bestiary. Modern usage. Today's dungeon masters use boulets in several distinct ways, each serving different purposes in their campaigns. The creature's versatility as both random threat and deliberate challenge makes it valuable for various narrative and mechanical situations. The most traditional use is as a wilderness encounter, something that adds danger to overland travel. This harkens back to the creature's earliest appearances in random encounter tables. A boulet attack breaks up a travel's monotony without necessarily derailing the adventure. The party deals with the threat and moves on, perhaps with a story about how they nearly became lunch for a landshark. Some DMs use boulets as environmental hazards rather than traditional enemies. In this role, the boulet is something to avoid or work around rather than fight. Perhaps the party needs to cross territory where a boulet lives, requiring stealth and careful movement to avoid detection. Or maybe they need to retrieve something from a boulet's lair, turning the encounter into a heist scenario where the goal is getting in and out without waking the beast. The creature works well as a centerpiece of localized crisis. A boulet has moved into farmland, threatening a community's livelihood. The party must find a way to either kill the creature or drive it off, dealing with terrified villagers, investigating the boulet's hunting patterns, and ultimately facing it in a confrontation where they have home field advantage for once. More creative uses involve leveraging the boulet's specific abilities for unique encounters. A villain might use magic to control a boulet, turning it into a living siege weapon. An ancient boulet might have something valuable lodged in its armor or digestive system, requiring the party to subdue rather than kill it. A boulet could be the key to accessing an underground location, with the party needing to follow its tunnels to reach otherwise inaccessible areas. The boulet also serves as an excellent teaching tool for new players. It demonstrates that not every problem in D&D has an obvious solution. You can't always just hit the monster until it falls down. Sometimes you need to think tactically, use the environment, or recognize when retreat is the better option. A party's first boulet encounter often becomes a memorable moment, the time they learn that the world contains threats that can't be overcome through straightforward combat. The boulet endures as one of D&D's most recognizable monsters because it fulfills a specific fantasy. It's the monster under the floor, the predator that can strike from anywhere, the force of nature that can't be reasoned with or avoided through clever positioning. In a game filled with dragons, demons, and elder gods, the boulet stands out by being none of those things. It's just an animal that happens to be a perfectly evolved killing machine with armor like a tank and jaws that can bite through steel. Across different planes and worlds, it goes by many names: Landshark, Ghohlbrorn, and Dwarvish, and even land dragons among the giants of Isgard. But the terror it inspires remains constant. What makes the boulet fascinating from a lore perspective is how much complexity emerges from such a simple concept. A burrowing predator, that's the entire premise. Yet from that starting point we get detailed ecology, hunting strategies, territorial behavior, reproductive cycles, cultural impact. The creature has inspired countless adventurers, challenged generations of players, and earned its place as a permanent fixture in the game. The Landshark teaches us something about good monster design. A memorable monster doesn't need elaborate backstory or complex motivations. It just needs to do one thing exceptionally well in a way that creates interesting gameplay. The boulet burrows and kills. Everything else is elaboration on that core function. This simplicity makes it easy to understand, difficult to defeat, and endlessly adaptable to different situations. Looking forward, the boulet will certainly continue appearing in future D&D products. New editions will adjust its mechanics. New settings might introduce fresh variants, and new generations of players will experience the moment of shock when the ground beneath them explodes and something massive comes rocketing out. The specifics will change, but the fundamental experience of encountering a boulet remains consistent. For your audience, the boulet represents a reminder that not all interesting lore comes from gods, ancient evils, or world-shattering events. Sometimes the most compelling stories emerge from understanding the ecology and behavior of a single dangerous creature. The boulet may not shape the fate of worlds, but it also shapes the fate of individual adventurers. And in a game built on personal stories and memorable moments, that's more than enough to ensure its legendary status. So the next time your party is traveling through open grasslands and someone asks if anything dangerous lives in the area, remember the Bulette. Remember that the ground is never as solid as it seems. And remember that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that come from below. Or sometimes the ones that say "Candygram" at your front door.